Good morning. This is Cynthia A. Johnson with Stand Up Now. Thank you for tuning in to this show. I hope you find this half hour enjoyable and inspiring as we showcase regular people from the city of Detroit who are doing great things and really making a difference in our city, the city of Detroit. And good morning, family. This is Cynthia A. Johnson. You're listening to us on Stand Up Now with Cynthia A. Johnson on Gospel 1440 WMKM Reborn. And we really do appreciate you for being with us. You could have been somewhere else, but you've decided to be here, and we do appreciate that. We have a special guest in the studio by the name of Christopher M. Blount. He is a probate attorney, and he just turned my sound down. Mr. Blount, good morning.
Good morning, Detroit. Good morning, Cynthia. Thanks for having me on. Sorry about the sound. We're working on that.
That's okay. All right, that's okay. Mr. Blount, I'm so glad that you're in here in the studio today with us. Thank you for agreeing to be our guest today.
Pleasure's all mine.
You know, let me get this mic together.
Oh, so it's not me. I didn't touch it that time.
Yeah, it was you. It was you. We were supposed to have these sounds together before we went on the air. That was the whole purpose of that little thing that we had. But anyway, let me tell you something, young women out there who's got something going on for yourselves. He's not married, no children. He is an attorney. He's smart. He's intelligent. He comes from a line of police officers. And speaking of police officers, that incident, and I'm asking all of us to put these families up in prayer. Put these families up in prayer who lost their two babies. And there were other children also who were struck by the person who was running away from being caught. As a result of criminal activity. And I was listening to a couple of people, even on the air this morning, people who I believe should know better. The police are not, and understand, and I want you just to consider this, please, family. You have the police who are doing their jobs. For the most part, they are doing their jobs. Then you have people out here who are doing their jobs to do criminal activity. If you were the victim of a criminal or of a would-be criminal, would you want the police, if the police saw them, would you want them just to park their vehicle and do nothing? Or would you want the police to try to pursue the criminal? What's your take on that, attorney? I know you're in here today specifically to speak on the probate matters, but we'll talk about that. And by the way, our phone number here is 313-871-6094 or 313-871-6095. I encourage you to call up and ask whatever kinds of probate questions that you have. You have Attorney Blount in here today. Let's take advantage of this articulate attorney. But anyway, what was your take on the situation?
I mean, I don't mind you asking me questions about that. I mean, it was an unexpected tragedy where questions and thoughts about what happened should be expected. If I'm a victim, I'm pretty sure if everyone's a victim, you would hope that the police would be proactive in helping solve the crime.
That's right.
I mean, I think everybody feels that way initially. Now, things may evolve where you feel that the police are not being as effective as you want them to be, but I think everybody's initial feeling after they have been victimized is for the people who committed the crime to be caught and held to pay the price for what they did.
And I really wish that we would get out of the habit, some of us, get out of the habit of blaming the police, law enforcement officials for doing their jobs when it comes to someone unfortunately getting hurt or killed. They are not the ones who we need to place blame on. Do you agree?
I agree. And when it comes to them doing their job, it was a couple months ago, and Chief Craig said something on TV, and this should really be more than a theme for this Detroit police officer. He said, look, we're going to do our jobs, and we're going to make sure we do our jobs in a morally, ethically, and constitutional way. And I think that's what everyone should expect out of the government entity that polices them.
That's right.
Following morals, following ethics, and following the Constitution.
Doing it by the letter of the law. And for police, there are policy and procedures. And we don't know what the policy and procedure, whether or not these officers followed policy and procedure. However, with the person who was running from or trying to avoid from getting caught, we need to switch this thing around. We have people out here creating havoc. So what I was listening to this morning was someone actually said, a governmental official, an elected official, actually said that she's tired of police chases. I'm tired of criminals.
Well, let's look at this. This is anyone who would want to adopt the mindset or the position that it was the police's fault because they get engaged in a chase. The person running from them, car, left the street, crossed over the curb, hit 4 children, I believe, killing 2. Mm-hmm. So I know this is not a community that would accept. I know this city that I was born and raised in is not going to accept that person who was running from the police getting out of the car and looking at everyone on that block and saying, hey, the police were chasing me, man. They made me run over and kill these kids. Nobody in the city of Detroit is going to accept that. Right. No one is going to accept that. No one is going to accept somebody who just ran over 4 kids, killing 2 in the city of Detroit. And he gets out of his car and he looks at everyone on the block and says, the police were chasing me. I killed these 2 kids. It's the police's fault. If nobody is really going to accept that argument, which I refuse to believe my fellow citizens are going to accept.
That's right.
How could we then turn this to saying that it was the police's fault how can we accuse the police of causing this, but we would not accept the person who actually did it blaming the police?
That's right.
That's an interesting, sociological standpoint there.
Yeah, yes, it is. So our prayers and thoughts go out to the families of these children. There's been so many situations that have happened over this 1 week, and I'm sure God does not like what's going on right now. I just pray for the families, and it saddens me so much that as a community of people, there are some out among us who just don't care. And I even pray for them. I pray for our Detroit Police Department. I pray for all of us. Anyway, that's the end of that. Let's transition over to what you actually came in here for, Mr. Blount, Attorney Blount.
Okay.
And that is, you have been an attorney now for about 8 years.
Yeah.
And you said that that LSAT stands for what?
Law School Admissions Test.
All right. Yeah, I took that LSAT too.
Yeah.
I took it once, 4 days after my mother passed, unfortunately, and I failed it, but maybe I'll take it again. I don't know. I'm just getting too old for that.
Why not?
Now. I'll be almost 60 years old soon.
No.
Isn't that's not too old?
You say you almost be 60 years old. Where chances are the law school you want to attend will probably be 200 years old. So why not?
Hey, you know what?
Right.
That's right.
So why not?
There you go. There you go. Never, ever, ever give up. And that's what I just heard you say, Attorney Blount. What kind of law do you practice?
Well, I started my career practicing criminal, and I'm now branching out into practicing probate law.
Why? Why did you want to branch out with probate?
Well, to be honest, it was an area of law that kind of interested me in law school, but once I started being active professionally, I didn't get into that area. And I remember some of the things from the cases that were interesting, like wills and trusts is a part of probate law. When I took my bar exam, they always keep stats on the bar exam. And there were like 2 trust questions on the bar exam, and they hadn't asked a trust question in like 9 years. So that still kind of stuck out in the back of my head, remembering that. And then it was a family situation.
A personal?
Yeah.
A personal.
Well, it was kind of a family member, and it was a death in the family, and we had to go to probate court. It's not something that was real messy, but not people arguing over the house or over in one piece of jewelry. It wasn't anything like that. It was just like, he died. We don't know what to do. We have to do something. I know we have to go to court, and I pretty much wound up being the person that did it. And that kind of my involvement has evolved from that.
Over 20 years ago, my mother was the thread who kept the family together. And once she died, it was a total mess. Family, even to this day, some of us still don't speak with one another.
Oh, you have to. You have to. You have to. This is one thing I've learned about probate court. And even before you get to court, the matters that will or will not go to court, one thing that's necessary is some degree of proactivity. And the expense of proactivity will never exceed the expense of inactivity or reactivity.
So in other words, you can't afford not to get your
affairs in order.
You can't afford right now. Right now.
And you know what it is? It's not that you can't afford not to. It's going to be, can your children afford to get it together once you've made your transition?
Before a person dies, what is it that you want to make sure that our listening audience know that they should do in getting their affairs in order?
Here's my position on this, is that you have an opportunity to determine what is going to happen with, even before you pass, when it comes to an issue such as a guardianship or conservatorship, that will flow into your end-of-life care and to you making your transition. And you have an opportunity to determine what happens to your possessions after your transition. So, do you want to do that on both of those issues, guardianship, conservatorship type issues, and your what happens to your property after you pass? Or do you want the government to determine what happens in those 2 areas? I don't think anybody wants the government to be the ones that determines what happens to their house.
That's right.
Or the one that determines what happens to their bank accounts. Or the one that determines who their guardianship can be or how a conservatorship for them could be managed if there's a time period of incapacity before you transition. So it's the opportunity ahead of time. Even if it's something as simple as, which is great, to put a family member on your bank account, on your checking account, on your savings account.
Should a person do that?
I believe so. For orderly transition of money to children or whoever you want it to go to, I believe so, because it'll avoid probate court. It automatically goes to that person. Now, sometimes people say, oh, don't do that because your son might get sued, or your husband might get, not your husband, but your son or your daughter or whoever you want to put on the account, they might get sued, and then that account becomes part of what they can sue.
Or they might take all your money.
But this is, that's a valid point. I've heard that. But, the way I answer that is to say that, well, you know your loved ones better than I do.
That's right.
So, but there's certain things you can put in place that will trigger it upon death. Upon your death, then it automatically goes. So you can kind of put those fail-safes in place, those kind of firewalls almost in place. But this is what I say to people. If you have big investment accounts and you're nervous about your family members and things of that nature, and you have large accounts that you kind of hesitant on doing that, I would say then for your own comfort and peace of mind, don't do that. But say, for instance, you have a smaller account that's kind of your ready access kind of.
What's a smaller account?
Well,
like how much money?
I mean, if you're the type of person that, I guess a small account, if you're a person who has like $500,000 socked away somewhere, maybe $40,000 might be a small account to you.
Okay.
But if you got like $1,000 socked away, then $10,000 might be a small account. But I would say whatever account you kind of use for ready access, it may be a good idea to have a family member on that, because there may be some immediate needs for your care that they could just go to that account and access something and pay something on your behalf as far as any type of long-term care, short-term care. But I wouldn't fault someone for being a little bit more conscious on their larger accounts and maybe preparing something to happen to those only upon your death. Making sure your life insurance policies have beneficiaries on them, things of that nature that will automatically trigger a transition or a payment without the court having to be involved.
How often should you check on those accounts that have beneficiaries?
Well, I don't know, every account that I've had a beneficiary issue with, I've always made my mother the beneficiary. But, I've never actually gone back to double check and make sure nothing has changed. I don't think they would change anything without your express permission. I would hope these companies that once you set it, it's set.
No, that maybe I didn't make myself clear. And I understand when you have your mother, of course, your mother you absolutely trust. But when you have been married or...
Oh, yes. Divorce comes, you go back and double check. I mean, if you don't want them to get anything and that relation is completely over, yes, they definitely revisit your estate planning and your financial designations after a divorce. Or if maybe your beneficiary was your child and unfortunately your child predeceased you.
Right.
Right, okay, I follow.
Okay,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
I had a big account. 2 years after I was divorced, I revisited the account and found that my ex-husband was on the account.
Oh, yeah.
And so he would have gotten everything, even though I have children.
Yeah.
Now, let's say, for instance, I did not revisit that IRA, but he was the beneficiary, but we were divorced, but I have children. Does he still get everything, or could my children fight?
Well, they could fight, but I think that would be a futile one, unless there's a lot of other evidence showing that after you put him on as the beneficiary, your intention and everything truly changed. There would have to be a lot of other evidence. That would be swimming upstream.
So in other words,
go change that beneficiary.
Go change it.
Go change it.
Look at who your beneficiaries are.
Right.
Including even your children.
Right, because your ex, do you really, that's once again being proactive. That's almost like the government jumping in. Do you want you may hate your ex-husband may hate your guts. Do you want him to get all your money?
And, right.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. Or maybe you do, but most cases, no, you don't. So you need to change those or check to make sure you know who's going to be receiving your monies upon your death, because actually it's not even really your money, it's really those who are living.
Yeah, upon your death, you're right.
Now, let's talk about a person who's not dead, but they are becoming ill. Or
thank you.
Or not only ill, being what's that one, losing memory? Alzheimer's.
Some type of dementia. Okay.
Right.
Great. That's where the guardianship and conservative issues come, and power of attorneys come while someone is still alive.
A power of attorney, does that mean an attorney?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
No, it's a designation for someone to act on your behalf, but it does not have to be an attorney.
Okay.
Now, this is great because I encountered this recently where a particular client and her son got together for the purpose of creating a guardianship between the two of them. And it was his mother, and I'm assuming with the help of her family members, because the grandmother was still alive as well.
Who was the one who was ill?
The mother, not the grandmother. It was actually the mother.
Okay, gotcha.
And the family, I sat with them in their living room, And the mother realized before things escalated further that maybe executing the guardianship now was the best thing to do. And once again, that's showing that proactivity. But that's a hard thing for people to confront.
Yeah.
I think at any age, confronting your own mortality and perhaps your own physical increase in ailing, and when you're confronted with a situation with the potential for you to get better, it's just not there.
Right.
You know, modern medicine, you do your prayers.
There is no cure for dementia.
Modern medicine is saying one thing, and at any age, whether it's some type of terminal cancer, dementia, anything, you have to confront that and recognize. I think that's hard for anybody to do, but it was fortunate that they were able to see it in this situation where it's not a scramble. Like, oh, what do we do? She did, it's like, I have enough cognitive ability to think about this, and we're going to do this now. And the son and the mother agreed upon it. The guardianship was done in court. The judge recognized it. Guardianship is in place. That's a hard thing. If it can be done like that, that's ideal. But I know that that's a hard thing to do. People believe and hold on and love their independence.
And yes, that again, I had a situation where I had have a cousin who, two cousins. They're both sisters. One has dementia, and the one who has dementia just wanted to hold on to her independence. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, she really couldn't, and I saw things like her allowing people to come into her home who she didn't know, giving away money. I mean, it was really bad. The other sister recognized this, but she didn't want to step in to do anything because she didn't want the sister who had the dementia, who still could make decisions and still could carry on a conversation, but she was repeating herself over and over and over. So we recognized that there was an issue, but the sister didn't want to step in. I spoke with the sister and said, listen, this is what's going on. She says, okay, go downtown. She wanted to put it on me, right, to do this.
Okay.
So I went downtown to get the guardianship in order. Lord have mercy, as soon as she was served with those papers, she was livid. She was so upset with me and wouldn't speak with me for a long time. But thank God I started the paperwork.
Right.
Because then I kind of like forced the other sister's hand.
Okay. You started the conversation.
I started it. Even though she was upset with me, I love my cousin. So I'm not going to sit there and see her do things that could potentially harm herself. I guess what I'm really saying to us, all of us who's listening to this show, love your family enough to not allow bad things to happen to them because they don't know any better.
You're right. And trying to make that decision making when someone can still, I guess, before their sanity or
still have their faculties.
Right, still have their faculties that's that proactivity I was talking about. And it's great when it can be, people can sit at a table and be a family decision as opposed to people running around like, oh man, what do? We got to get this done now. It's getting bad. Everybody's calm and orderly, and things will be done efficiently and effectively.
What do you think about those situations where an unfortunate situation comes and no one expected it, but they had no insurance?
Well, that will most likely push the burden of your burial expenses onto your children or your next of kin. And it's a situation where no transition of wealth has been passed down, or at least by way of an insurance policy. Maybe it's too expensive for people to have, or I don't know. But yeah, I guess if it's unexpected, that's pretty rough. But everybody should have a little bit of life insurance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just a little bit.
I agree. We have less than 2 minutes. Please, the last couple of minutes is yours. Tell the audience, last 1 minute is yours. Tell the audience what they need to know and what you would hope that we would do.
Okay, well, for this audience in particular in Detroit, I think that too many of the cases in probate court are made up of people from Detroit, where we're not a majority. We shouldn't make up 80% of the cases in probate court when we're not 80% of the population of Wayne County. It's Wayne County Probate Court. And I think that our statistics, those statistics reflect that we're not being as wise as we should be and as proactive as we should be in taking care of our affairs. And a lot of probate court has to do with the intergenerational transition of wealth. Now, to shorten that up is making sure that you pass some wealth behind to your children or to whoever you are to determine to have it, instead of court determining who has it. I'm pretty sure you don't work that hard all your life to have somebody else jump in and determine what happens to your belongings once you leave.
Is there a phone number you want to leave?
You can reach me at 313-623-5744.
And this is Stand Up Now with Cynthia A. Johnson. Thank you, attorney.